My name is Vanessa Cole, and I learned the hard way that silence can be louder than screaming. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of day where everything seems ordinary: school drop-offs, emails, dishes drying in the rack, and then one small thing slices through that calm like a blade. A cardboard box, medium-sized, no return address. Just our home scribbled in messy block letters and a sticker that said, "Handle with care." My daughter, Ellie, brought it in from the porch like it was Christmas morning. She was 9, still young enough to get excited by mail, still old enough to sense when something felt off. She set it down on the kitchen table, her fingers already tugging at the tape, and God help me, I let her open it. There was a rustle of paper, a soft gasp, then nothing. Ellie didn't move. She just stared down into the box, her whole body frozen like someone had pressed pause on her soul. I walked over slowly, not thinking anything serious. Maybe it was broken glass, maybe it was something dead. I leaned over her shoulder and saw it, and I swear to you, my stomach flipped like a switch had been thrown inside me. It was a stuffed rabbit, old, dirty, one ear missing, its fur matted and yellowed like it had been buried underground. But it wasn't just the toy that chilled me. It was the ribbon around its neck, the same blue gingham ribbon I remembered tying myself when I was 11 years old. Ellie looked up at me and whispered, "Why would they send me this?" She didn't understand. But I did. Because that rabbit used to be mine. And the last time I saw it, I was holding it during a screaming match between my parents. I had thrown it into the fireplace that night, flames swallowing the thing whole. I remember it burning. I remember the smell of singed fur and the cracking sound as the plastic eyes melted. And now it was here, in my house, in my daughter's hands. I grabbed the box and scanned it again. No sender, no postmark, no note inside, just the rabbit, wrapped in pages of the local church bulletin, the same one my mother used to hand out on Sundays when she played the role of the sweet, soft-spoken community matriarch. Ellie kept staring at me, waiting for an explanation I couldn't give. I forced a smile, told her it was probably a mistake, and took the rabbit away, locking it in the hallway closet like it might get up and walk around if left unattended. That night, after Ellie went to bed, I sat on the floor with the box in front of me, slowly peeling through the crumpled bulletin pages, my hands trembling. One of them had a faint coffee ring in the corner, and the headline read, "Forgiveness is freedom." I almost laughed. That was exactly the kind of manipulative garbage my mother believed in, at least when it suited her. But what struck me more was the date printed on the page, September 9th, 1999. I did the math in my head. I was 8 years old. That was the same week I stopped speaking to my father, the same week I started locking my bedroom door at night. And somehow this page had survived over 2 decades, only to resurface inside my home. I stared at that paper so long it started to blur, the words swimming into each other like a foggy memory. I should have thrown it away. I should have lit a match and watched it all turn to ash again. But I didn't. I folded the bulletin carefully, placed it in a drawer, and went to bed with a tightness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. The next morning I woke up before Ellie, made coffee I didn't want, and stood by the hallway closet like something was going to happen. Nothing did. The house was quiet, normal, full of sunshine pouring through the windows like it had every morning since we moved here. But I felt like the walls were holding their breath. I opened the closet. The rabbit was still there, slumped over in the box like a corpse. I stared at it for too long. Then I picked it up and shoved it deep into a tote bag, walked out to the trash bins behind the complex, and buried it under a bag of spoiled chicken and wet cereal boxes. I told myself that was the end of it. I told myself a lot of things. Ellie never brought it up again. She just avoided looking at the kitchen table for a few days, like the box had left some invisible mark on the wood. But the real shift didn't happen until 2 weeks later, when a second package arrived. This time, it was smaller. No label again. Same handwriting, same beige cardboard. And inside, God, I still see it when I close my eyes, was a Polaroid. One single photo, not in an envelope, not protected. just rattling around in the box like they wanted it to get damaged but not enough to be unreadable. It was a photo of me. Me, at 13, sitting on the edge of our old porch in the summer. I was wearing a blue tank top and had a scraped knee. I remember that exact day, because it was the first time I ever lied to a teacher about a bruise. And the person who took that photo was not supposed to have it. I held that Polaroid like it was radioactive. My fingers started to shake and I had to sit down before my knees gave out. The image was faded, warped slightly from time, but there was no mistaking it. It was me. That porch, that day, that feeling. I remembered sitting there after my mother slapped me for slamming the screen door too hard. My dad was inside, drinking. My little brother was off at a friend's. And someone with a camera, had been watching me. No one in our family owned a Polaroid. We never had money for extras like that. And yet there it was. This picture didn't just appear. It was kept. Preserved. And now sent to my daughter's house like a warning. Or a reminder. My first instinct was to burn it. But something told me not to. I slipped it into an old recipe book I hadn't touched in years, slid it back onto the shelf, and went to wash my hands 3 times. That night, I dreamed of the porch. Only this time, I was the one holding the camera, and Ellie was the one sitting there, knees scraped, staring into the lens with the same hollow confusion I felt as a child. I woke up covered in sweat, breathing, like I'd run a marathon. I got up, went to the kitchen, and made a decision I didn't want to make. I called my mother. She picked up on the 3rd ring, her voice smooth and artificial as ever, like she was already smiling. "Vanessa, how are you, sweetheart?" I didn't answer that. I went straight to it. "Why did you send Ellie that rabbit?" There was silence. A long one. Then the fake smile again. "I have no idea what you're talking about." I felt my teeth clench. "Don't lie to me. You wrapped it in church bulletins from 1999. It was mine. You knew what that would do to me." Another pause. Then she said softly, almost too softly, "Maybe I thought you should remember where you come from." I don't know what came over me. I laughed. This bitter, stunned laugh that echoed through my empty kitchen like a slap. I didn't forget. You think I forgot what happened in that house? And then she said something I still don't understand. You remember it wrong. You always did. My throat went dry. My whole body felt like it had been dunked in ice water. "The photo," I said without meaning to. "Was that you? Did you take it?" "What photo?" she said. Too fast, too innocent. And then the line went dead. Not hung up, not disconnected, just dead. I pulled the phone away and stared at it. 5 bars, full battery, no call failed message. It was like the call had never happened. I sat there for a long time, trying to breathe, trying to think. But the truth was already spreading through me like rot. They weren't trying to scare Ellie. They were trying to reach me. And now they knew exactly where I lived. I started checking the locks at night, twice. Then, 3 times. I moved Ellie's bed farther from the window, bought blackout curtains, installed a second deadbolt. I told her it was just for safety, that the neighborhood was getting worse, but I think she already knew I was lying. Kids know. They might. Not say it, but they feel it in your hands when you tuck them in your voice when you say goodnight. And she definitely felt it when I jumped at the sound of the mail slot clanking the next morning. Another envelope, no return address, just my name. This time it was thin, only 1 sheet of paper inside. I opened it with a knife. Not because I was scared of anthrax or anything, just I didn't want to touch it. Like the paper itself might burn. It was a letter. Typed, no signature. Just 2 lines. Your daughter should know what kind of mother she has. Let her see everything. Or we will. I dropped it. Literally. It fluttered down to the tile, and I just stood there, heart slamming, ears ringing. Let her see everything. Or we will. I crouched down and picked it back up, rereading it over and over like maybe I'd missed something. A clue. A mistake. But no. Whoever wrote it was careful. Precise. That paper had been folded with a ruler. I tucked it into a plastic sandwich bag and shoved it behind the fridge like a lunatic. That afternoon, I called Ellie's school and told them I'd be picking her up early all week. Then I called a locksmith. Then I called a friend who used to work in private security and asked him something I never thought I'd ask anyone in my life. Can you sweep my apartment for bugs? He came that evening, brought a little black briefcase with antennae and meters I didn't understand. I watched him check the vents, the smoke alarms, the sockets. He didn't find anything electronic. But he did find something behind the bathroom. Mirror. A small envelope taped to the inside of the wall cavity, like it had been shoved there decades ago and just never moved. This yours? He asked. I took it like it might bite me. Opened it slowly. Inside were 4 small black and white photos of my mother in a hospital bed, hooked up to wires, looking right at the camera. Looking right at the camera. One of them had writing on the back. Just 3 words. She kept lying. I didn't tell Ellie about the photos. I didn't tell her about the letter. I couldn't. What would I even say? Hey, sweetie, someone wants to destroy your mother with decades-old evidence and emotional landmines. Now go brush your teeth. No. I kept it all inside, let it rot under the surface like I'd done for years, thinking maybe if I just kept us moving, kept her safe, the past would stay where it belonged, dead and buried. But then she started asking questions. Little ones. At first. Mom, why do we never see Grandma and Grandpa? Why don't you have pictures from when you were little? And then one night, after I tucked her in, she looked up at me with those big, tired eyes and said, You used to smile more. Did I do something wrong? I almost cried right there. But I didn't. I kissed her forehead, turned out the light, and sat on the floor outside her room with my back against the wall until morning. The next day, a man came to my door. Mid-40s, buzz cut, khaki jacket, sunglasses. Said he was from the leasing office, doing routine safety checks. Something about fire exits and faulty stair lights. I didn't believe him for a second. He kept looking at the walls, at my bookshelf, at the corner where Ellie's backpack always sat. I asked for ID. He didn't have any. Said he left it in the truck. I told him to get it. He never came back. I reported it to the property manager, who said no one by that description worked there. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat on the couch with the lights off, holding a kitchen knife, listening to every creak and pop in the walls like they were messages. Something had started. And I didn't know how to stop it. Only that it was coming for me. And this time, it wasn't. Staying in the past. 2 days later, I got a voicemail. No number. Just a message that lasted 11 seconds. No words. Only breathing. Slow, steady, familiar in a way I couldn't place at first. I played it again. Again. On the 4th listen, I realized why it made my skin crawl. It sounded like my father. The way he used to breathe when he'd fall asleep in his chair after screaming at the TV, with his chest wheezing like the sound itself hated him. But he'd been dead for 6 years. I went to the bathroom and threw up. Ellie was at school. I had a few hours. I took the knife out of the kitchen drawer again, not for protection, but for the control it gave me. I wasn't going to use it. I just needed to feel like I had something sharp, something real. I went back to the closet and pulled out the church bulletin. I hadn't looked at it since that first day. It still smelled faintly of mold and ash. I scanned the bottom corners. Nothing. The folds. Still nothing. But on the very edge of the last page in the crease, there was a faint impression, like something had been written on top of it. I held it up to the light. The indentations formed 4 digits, 6217. I didn't know what it meant. A date? A code? An address? I wrote it down and hid the bulletin behind the fridge again. Then I grabbed the Polaroid and looked closer. Not at me this time, but at the background. There was a tree behind the porch. a thin one. I remembered it as a sapling we planted when I was maybe 7. In the photo, it looked fully grown. And next to it, barely visible, a dark shape. Square. Angular. Like a box. Not the kind you ship things in. The kind you bury. I stared at it for minutes before it clicked. Our old property had a tool shed that was locked for years. My dad always said it was rotting. Unsafe. Nothing in there but rust and splinters, he told me once. But I remembered the padlock, the chains, the way my mother always looked away when we walked by it. I felt like I was going to faint. I grabbed my keys and drove. Not to the property, not yet. I drove past the edge of town, parked behind a gas station, and called someone I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. Maya, I whispered when she picked up. It's Vanessa. I need to ask you about 6217. There was silence on the line. Then a breath. Then she said, I hoped you'd never call me. I hadn't heard Maya's voice in 14 years, and yet it pulled memories out of me like a thread catching on old fabric. She sounded older, of course, rougher around the edges, like life had sanded her down. But the fear in her voice was instant and familiar. Where did you see that number? She asked, low and tight. It was hidden in a church bulletin, I said. From 1999, stuffed in a box they sent my daughter. Silence again. Then, are you alone? I was parked in the shadow of a closed-down diner. The sun was bleeding across the sky like it had somewhere to be. I looked around. Yes. You need to come to my place, now. I'll text you the address. Don't call, don't respond. Just show up, and bring the picture. The line went dead. Maya had been my childhood friend. My only friend, really. She lived 3 blocks over from our old house. I used to sneak out and sleep under her bed on the nights I couldn't stand mine. But something had happened between us. Something neither of us ever talked about. Not after the night my dad found us whispering behind the shed. Not after she stopped coming to school. I followed the GPS to a part of town that felt like it belonged to a different decade. Everything was faded. Curtains drawn, lawns dead, mailboxes rusted. Her house was one of the few with a working porch light. I knocked once. She opened the door fast, like she'd been watching me pull up. Maya hadn't changed much. Still tall, still guarded, still with those eyes that saw through people like glass. She didn't hug me. She just looked at me for a beat, then said, You kept it. What? The picture. You brought it. I nodded. She stepped aside. Her house was dark inside, cluttered, with the blinds taped shut. She led me into the kitchen and motioned to sit. Then she reached into a drawer and pulled out a shoebox, worn and taped. Inside were letters, newspaper clippings, photos, and more Polaroids. They sent them to me too, she said, over the years, one at a time. Always after I thought I'd finally moved on. My throat tightened. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought I was the only one being punished. She pulled out a clipping. You remember this? It was a local news story from 2003. Child Protective Services investigates family on Maple Drive. I remembered the day. They came to the school, took me into an office, asked if my parents ever hit me. I said no, because my mother was waiting outside the door. Maya whispered, They closed the case 2 weeks later, said there wasn't enough evidence. That number, 6217, that's the case file. I felt like the floor dropped under me. How do you know? Because I stole the paperwork the day they cleared your parents. I knew they'd buried it. And I thought maybe one day you'd need it. My hands were cold. Why now? Why send it to my daughter? Maya's face twisted. Because they're not sending it. Someone else is. Someone who knows what your parents did. Someone who's been watching for years. And now they want you to remember. All of it. I sat there frozen, the Polaroid clenched in my fist. Maya pulled out one last photo. It wasn't of me. It wasn't of her. It was of a man, late 40s, grinning in front of a rusted shed. My father, holding something in his hand. A chain. A key. The shed. "I think whatever you're looking for," she said, "it's still there. But if you go back, Vanessa, you need to be ready. Because you're not the only one watching anymore." I left Maya's house just after midnight. The shoebox of files in the back seat, the Polaroids in my glove box, my hands on the wheel like I was trying to hold the world still. The roads were empty. I didn't play music, I didn't speak. I drove straight through the part of town where I swore I'd never return, past the school, past the church, and finally past the mailbox on Maple Drive that still leaned slightly left, like it was tired of standing upright. The house was gone, bulldozed years ago, but the shed, that rotted, chained-up box behind the willow tree, it was still there, standing like a wound that never healed. I parked 2 houses down, walked the last stretch with a flashlight in one hand, and the key I'd taken from the photo, yes, that key, in the other. Maya had kept it hidden inside a hollowed-out Bible. She said it was time someone used it. The padlock clicked open too easily, like it had been waiting for me. Inside, the shed smelled like earth and rust and something older than memory. Dust clung to the air in thick ribbons. There was a tarp in the corner, folded too neatly. I pulled it back. Underneath were boxes, old ones, stacked in 3s, files, journals, tapes, and a folder marked 6217. I didn't open it there. I couldn't. I took everything and left, locking the shed behind me, not out of fear, but out of finality. When I got home, I told Ellie to go pack a bag. We were going to the coast. She didn't ask why. She just nodded. She was always smarter than I gave her credit for. I spent the next week reading everything, watching the tapes, relearning my own life from the shadows someone else had preserved. There were statements, confessions, evidence, names. But what mattered most wasn't what was in those files. It was what I did with them. I didn't go to the police. I didn't write a tell-all. I sent exactly 5 envelopes, each one with copies, to the board of my father's old company, to the principal of the private Christian school that still bore my mother's name, to 3 people whose silence had protected them for decades. And I didn't sign any of them. I just included one line. She remembers everything now. Then I sat back and watched. The headlines came first, then the firings, the apologies, the denials. One by one, they folded under the weight of the truth I'd carried alone for 30 years. My daughter never opened another box from my family again, because none ever came. My parents vanished from public view, moved states, changed numbers, tried to disappear, but the internet never forgets, and neither do I. Ellie is safe now. She sleeps through the night. And I do too, most nights, because revenge doesn't always come with fire and fury. Sometimes it comes in silence, in boxes, in a daughter's question that cracks a life wide open. And sometimes the cruelest thing you can do to someone who built their world on lies is to let the truth walk through the front door and unpack itself. Hi, this is Sarah, the creator of this channel and the original writer of this story. I want to make it clear that this is a completely fictional story, fully imagined and written by me. None of the characters, events, or details are real. Everything is a product of creative storytelling, made specifically for Revenge with Sarah. I put my heart into these stories to bring you emotional, powerful, and thought-provoking narratives. If you enjoyed this one, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Thank you so much for watching until the end. And remember, sometimes the truth doesn't knock. It just arrives in a box.